So I found the cleanest data fetching pattern in Angular, and in this video I'm going to show you how we can go from this typical flow that we use in most Angular applications, this multi-step process to fetch data, to this one-liner basically to get the same functionality at the end. And this is going to make your app much more cleaner in terms of the code and also make it more scalable to make it easier to maintain in the future. So how do we do this? Let's find out. But before we move forward, I just wanted to give you a background of the application that I was building and the problem that I had, which led me to this data access pattern, all right? The application that I was building was this full stack Angular e-commerce application. And by the way, if you just want the code for this, you can find the link in the description if you're interested in that. So we had a products grid here, as you can see here, and I wanted to implement data fetching for this products grid. So I have this products data that I want to fetch from Firebase. And I also have this categories. So this is a filter, the first filter, and the second filter is that I also want to filter on the search term here. I wanted to implement a data access pattern where I could send these two categories, and whenever they change, we can automatically get the products data back. So if I show you the simple code architecture that I came up with, which scales as well, is that we have a component here. So this is the products grid. And then we have a signal store here. Now you can have any store here, but I'm going to use the NGRX signal store, which is my favorite. So the NGRX signal store basically encapsulates all of the state for this data that is needed for this product, and also the loading state, the error state, which is the complex part. And then this communicates with the products API, which actually implements the Firebase data access logic and gives back the data to the store. And then it flows back to the component here in the form of signals. So if I go to the code, I've created a typical e-commerce store here specifically just to show you how it is implemented. And the demo that you saw here, it basically is the result of this. We have your typical store and we need some state, obviously, initially to store this. So we have our products array that we have the filters, the category, and the search term here. And then for data fetching, or even for mutation, we need to have a loading and we need to have an error because these are network requests. And with this state, we can then provide a method, which is the fetch products method. And this will be a signal method. Now, why a signal method? Because I want to make this reactive. So here, for example, I'm just setting the filter parameters. The filter parameters is the type with category and search term. And now in my product, if I go to my products grid, I can very easily see that I have two inputs, which are input signals, and they are basically computed here. So whenever these change, this computed updates products query parameter, and then this .store.fetch products is called with computed itself, so that whenever this computed changes, whenever any of these parameters changes, this calls this function automatically. So this is the reactive flow that we usually use. Now, if for example you're using RxJS, you are going to use Rx method. Since I was using promise-based syntax, I am just using signal method here already. Okay, so what we do here first is that we patch the state and we set the loading state to true so that we can get the spinner here. And then we use the products API fetch products function. I had the fetch is because I was using Firebase JavaScript SDK and it provides promise-based functions. I just created a promise-based function here, implementing the category and the search functionality here according to the search function. And then I return back the product stock here like this, okay? So basically it's a promise-based function, async await function, and it returns a product array. And in my store then, I go back and I just pass in these store.filters that I got, and I get these products, and then I patch these products in my store here. And obviously we also have to clear the error. And then we also have to handle the error. So there's a try and catch block. In the catch error, we need to set the error here. And finally, we need to do loading false here, okay? This is your typical flow. If obviously you're using RxJS or you have observable based, maybe HTTP REST APIs, you're going to use the HTTP client on the products API here, and you're going to use Rx method here to actually have an operator chain to implement that. In either case, this is a multi-step process. And you can see that it works just fine. But what are the problems with this? Okay, so the problem is not with the implementation, but the problem is with the code structure itself. And as the app grows, I want to actually also add the wishlist data because this is also be globally loaded in my store. And I also want the cart data, which is also going to be globally loaded. So I want all of this data as well to be fetched from Firestore. Now, if I try to implement it in this pattern, I'm going to create the same functions with the same steps. A lot of boilerplate code here, okay, would be required to implement that. Then for each of them, we'll have an error separately. Each of them will have a loading separately. So it all adds up to the complexity of my e-commerce store and lots of data to manage. So this implementation that we typically use is a bit difficult to scale for multiple entities or for more data, which is inevitable when you have large scale applications like this. Even for such a simple application, simple e-commerce application, this problem arises really frequently. So what we do here is that we can replace all of this with the resource API. And the resource API is such a nice little API provided by Angular in its more recent version that is encapsulates all of this into one single line. So let me show you that next. So the first thing that you need to do if you want to implement resource is obviously you need to be on the latest Angular version. And then you're going to go to your API and you are going to create, instead of a promise-based function here like this, you're going to create a products resource. All right. So I already have created a products resource here. I'm just going to uncomment this. Okay. And this is going to take not just the parameters here like this, but a signal of the parameters, because a resource is basically automatically reactive. So you need to send in the parameters as a signal so that whenever those parameters change, the resource is automatically going to refetch itself. Okay, so we just create a resource here like this, and the parameters are then going to be the filters that we have. And then this loader basically gets called whenever the parameters change. Now we're going to get the loader parameters here like this. And then the rest of the stuff is very similar to what we had in the fetch products. So we just use the same functionality and we just return the same product. So we have our products resource. Now remember, this is just declaring the resource, returning the resource. This resource is actually not contained within this service. We want to actually store this resource in the e-commerce store itself, okay, the NGRX signal store, so not in the API. But we encapsulate this functionality here so that we can use it and we don't crowd our e-commerce store that much with all of this data, API specific data. So let's save this and let's go back to our e-commerce typical store. And instead of fetch products now, we can just remove this. Instead of fetch products, we can just use with resource. Now for this with resource, this is not part of the official NGRX signal store as yet, although it is going to be part of it as soon as the resource API becomes a bit more stable, like developer preview or in the stable. Currently it's experimental. So whenever that happens, the with resource is slated to go in the main NGRX signal store so that we can use it. But currently it is part basically of the NGRX toolkit. So if I show you that, you can see that NGRX toolkit is basically a community project. So you can see that we have a with resource here in which we can specify our resources that we use in our project. The important note here, this extension is very likely to land at NGRX once Angular's resource enters developer preview. So it is a good bet to start using it right now in your code bases to make your code more maintainable. All right. So now in with resource, we can give your resources that you have. So you can give store products API, and let's import this here. So add import from Angular Architects, NGRX toolkit. And then we have the store and the products API, and we can actually create named resources like this. So for example, we specify the products and we give products API.products resource directly here. And we pass in the store.filters as the parameters. Now remember, we pass in not the signal value, but the signal itself. Obviously, we just need one more thing as well. And we need here set filters here so that we can set the filters whenever the signal method changes. And so in our products grid, then instead of fetch products, we can do set filters here. We can do set filters here like this. And remember, we need to send the signal or the computer itself, not the value, because otherwise it's just going to be called once. All right, we want it to be reactive. Okay, so this is fine. And if you now go back to this, you can see now that we have just one liner that we need for this. So whenever this is going to change, it's going to automatically refetch this resource. So this is all we need for that. Now, where do we get the loading state? Where do we get the value? The great thing about the with resource block here, or the function here provided by the NGRX toolkit, is that we are going to get our value and loading all encapsulated in this name here. All right. So this makes our app really scalable so that we can add more named resources and then we can refer to all of those separately. It's going to automatically handle all of the things required for that internally. All right. So if you go to the products grid and you want to update the products grid to our new resource based method, all we want to do is we want to do store.products. We can do products value instead of the products. Okay. All right. So we can do something like this, and here we can do store.products.value here like this. And if, for example, I also want to add the products loading here, I can just simply write in the responsive grid here, and I'm going to give in the new store.is products loading here like this. Okay. All right. So products is loading, and then you have products error as well in case that you get an error in that case. Okay. So this is all built in that same thing, and we can just directly bind it to our component. So let's save this and let's try it out. And now when you go to your application again, you're going to see the same thing. Everything is fetching fine. You select electronic, clothing, the same data is fetched really nicely. And you can also see a loading here for some time. Let's make it slower so that we can do it 3G. Yeah. So you can see we have loading here like this. Okay. So all of the states we can use in our components. We can also add the error as we need it. So there you have it. Full reactivity implemented with data fetching with just one line of code. Clean, minimal code that is easier for you to maintain in the future as well. And this is just a snapshot. So this is just the products grid. Now, if I take you to my final code here, you're going to see that I have the products, the wish list, the selected product, the review, the cart data. All of this is in different resources, encapsulated very neatly in the with resource section here. And we can use it in whatever component that we want. So obviously this is, I just showed you a snapshot of this project. The full stack Angular e-commerce project basically has a lot of things going for it. So it is really full featured. You can see that we have our products grid that I showed you, and then you can go in your details here as well. You can add stuff to your cart. You can add stuff to your wish list here like this. It has notifications, it has errors even. It has a whole review section as you can see here. And you can go in your wish list. You can add this to cart here like this. You can delete things from your wish list here like this. And all of this is integrated with Firebase at the back end. And I'm using also Firebase functions to actually check out, and it's also integrated with Stripe as a payment provider. All right. All of that is contained in this. We have the shopping cart here, then we can proceed to checkout, and in this you can give shipping information and all of that other stuff. We also have a nice My Orders page where you finalize the order and you can see whether the order has been paid or not, and all of the orders that have been created but they have not been paid. All right. A full featured Angular application which also is server side render enabled, and it also has SEO optimized pages so that it can be used in a real production setting as well. All right. So if you want this code and if you want to continue building this application, or you want to just use this for your own application or project, you can get it from the link in the description. You can actually reach this page. Now my shop also has purchasing power parity enabled. So if you are from a country with low income, you can actually use these codes here that's provided specific to your country, and you can get a nice little discount here on this as well. So go get this if you're interested, even if you just want to learn from this, because this is a nice example of how full stack Angular applications can be built. So I hope you like this little tutorial about the resource API and you go about using it. If you have not used it already, do check it out and let me know in the comments if you liked it and what problems you faced. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time with another video.